So most people recognize that couples fight and they argue, and that even happens in healthy relationships. But we still have this fanciful idea that we shouldn't argue very often. We shouldn't fight very often, and when we do, it shouldn't get intense. That happy couples, that just doesn't happen. That there's a lot of love and friendship and closeness, and it's just a happy situation with a few bumps along the road. And that if there's major bumps and if there's major fights or major arguments, or that there are times when you feel lonely or alone in your relationship, that the whole thing should just be done. Like, that's what I see a lot of going around. But here's what people fail to consider. Your marriage isn't just a romantic relationship. It's a family relationship. And you may get along with your siblings now that you don't live with them, but do you remember when you did? You loved them. They were your friends and you enjoyed your time together, but man, you would fight like cats and dogs. And you know this sometimes when you get together for family reunions. A lot of you out there, you'll get together for family reunion, and after a few days, the tensions start to mount. Why? Because we're human. Because we see things differently from one another, so we disagree. Because we're all insecure in some way or another, and we might get offended. Or most of us are insecure, I should say, in one way or another, and tend to get offended, or to assume that we're being insulted, or to assume that we're being slighted. Or maybe we are being insulted or slighted, but we decide to handle it in a way that's confrontational. This happens in our family relationships. And yet we don't say, you are not my brother anymore. We don't say, you are no longer my father. Very rarely does that happen. It happens, but it's very rare. And yet with our marriage, we might look at it as, well, we fought, we're arguing. I feel lonely, I feel slighted, I feel unwanted, I feel insulted, I feel offended. This is not what I signed on for. But this isn't just a romantic relationship, it's a family relationship. If you've lived with a roommate, if you lived with someone who was your friend, you got along amazingly until you started to live together for a long period of time, and then you start to grate on each other. All relationships have conflict. Now, I'm not saying you should put up with abuse or tolerate abuse, but there's a difference between abuse and arguing or fighting or hurt feelings or giving offense or taking offense. Your marriage, in order for you to grow, just like your relationship with your parents, just like your relationship with your siblings, it needs forgiveness, it needs humility, it needs accountability, it needs kindness, it needs fun times, and needs working together through the hard times. Your marriage is like your relationship with your siblings, with your friends, with your parents. It's going to have conflict sometimes, but that doesn't mean you throw in the towel, just like you wouldn't throw in the towel on your best friend or throw in your towel on your siblings just because there was conflict, because they are always your siblings. And barring some major trespasses, your spouse should always be your spouse. You can work through these things. There will be conflict, but you can learn how to grow closer.